But he paved the road for so many others to follow. Doug Wilder became the first elected black governor. Carol Moseley Braun went to the U.S. Senate. Because of Jesse, the Democratic Party changed its rules, ending the winner-take-all distribution of delegates during presidential primaries, which meant underdogs and outsiders like Bill Clinton or Bernie Sanders could stay competitive and build momentum instead of getting knocked out early. And it was because of that path that he had laid, because of his courage, his audacity, that 2 decades later, a young black senator from Chicago's South Side would even be taken seriously as a candidate for the presidential nomination. I still credit that first run of Jesse's and Harold Washington's campaign for drawing me to Chicago. And I didn't know anybody when I first arrived. And I was working as a community organizer, as it so happens, in neighborhoods right around here. Roseland, Woodlawn, Alt Gill, West Pullman. And I'm meeting these young preachers like Meeks and some crazy priest named Flager. And And I guess Jenkins was running around, but he's kind of young. He came a little bit later, so I'm going to churches and I'm listening to all these amazing preachers, and it was hard work, and half the time I didn't know what I was doing, and progress was slow, and I definitely didn't know how I was going to survive these Chicago winters, because I grew up in Hawaii. But I do remember heading to the Push headquarters some Saturday mornings to listen and learn from Reverend Jackson. And y'all remember how on some mornings, if there was a major issue going on, the room would be packed to the rafters. And sometimes some celebrity just wanders in. And then some mornings it was kind of low-key. Either way, though, the announcements would be made, and Reverend Barrow would say a prayer, and Jesse would sit there, and then finally he'd gather himself up and stand, and he'd start kind of slow, you know, and sometimes he'd talk kind of low, so you couldn't quite catch what he was saying, so everybody lean in. And over time, it was that same boundless energy that would emerge, and that same passion and that same insight. And he'd offer you a master class in economics on a Saturday morning. And he'd give you a seminar in American history and American politics. And he'd make complicated things plain. And he'd tell stories that would make you laugh 1 minute and cry the next. And whether you were a bus driver or a teacher or a business leader or a young organizer, you came away from those meetings with a better understanding of how the world worked, how power worked. And more importantly, he made you believe that if we came together, we could make the world work better. Now, we've been talking about Jesse telling us we are somebody. I am somebody. And he wasn't just talking to young black boys like Isaiah, though he loved them fiercely. He wasn't just talking to young black girls to help them believe, though he believed in them. He was talking about everyone who was left out, everyone who was forgotten, everyone who was unseen, everyone who was unheard. And in that sense, he was expressing the very essence of what our democracy should be. The ideals at the very heart of the American experiment. The belief that regardless of what we look like or how we worship, regardless of where our ancestors come from or how much money we got, we're all part of the American family. We're all endowed with the same inalienable rights to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We're all obligated to answer the call and step forward and take responsibility for making wrongs right and for caring for our neighbors and bringing the reality of America a step closer to its glorious ideals. And answering that call isn't always easy. And Reverend Jackson and his family knew that better than most. To do what he did, he would endure all kinds of hatred and setbacks and betrayals and doubters and death threats. He would sacrifice, as Jim Reynolds pointed out, the leisure and comfort of what was available to him as a far more financially secure life. And those sacrifices were not his alone. They were shared by his wife and his children. And they bore that burden with grace and strength. I got to know the Reverend and his family over the years, and as I watched his children follow his example of service, I came to appreciate the conviction that drove him, that he had passed on, the faith that guided him and that he had passed on. And it was a faith that didn't waver, a flame that burned bright, even as his body began to fail. The last time he and I had a chance to visit in person, he was already ailing. It was getting difficult for him to stand, difficult for him to speak. We were in Hyde Park, in a hotel room. I embraced him and figured we'd just have a low-key visit. Maybe he'd need some rest. And he starts coming up with this project and this initiative and issues I needed to look into. And here's some commentary that he would suggest, and some phrasing that he thought might work, and maybe we might co-write an article. And listening to him, I couldn't help smiling. Because it took me back. And I started reminiscing with him about those Saturday mornings at Push and the breakfast that he'd host, you know, away from the full meeting. And I didn't get a chance to go to that until I was a state senator, and probably Meeks invited me. So I was like, you know, I was tagging along with Meeks. And he'd pull out a piece of paper, you know, he'd scribbled some stuff, and he'd start passing out assignments and pulling together working groups and asking for updates on the latest campaign. And I'll admit, let's face it, those sessions could run a little long and did not always follow Robert's Rules of Order. But when Jesse called your name and acknowledged you in that room especially if you were young, especially if you were just coming up, especially if you weren't sure you could pull off what you thought you might be able to do, especially when you needed help. When he did that, you stood up a little straighter. You knew you'd been seen by this giant. He'd laid hands on you and let you know you had a contribution to make. And so that day, I told him how much that meant to me and how much it meant to so many lives that he impacted. And I told him thank you, because I'd always be grateful for that legacy of hope. I know I've gone long. It was going to be much shorter until Isaiah spoke. I figure if a Detroit Piston can take up this much time, it was beautiful, and I mean that. Love me some Isaiah. We are living in a time when it can be hard to hope. Each day we wake up to some new assault on our democratic institutions. Another setback to the idea of the rule of law. An offense to common decency. Every day you wake up to things you just didn't think were possible. Each day we're told by those in high office to fear each other and to turn on each other, and that some Americans count more than others, and that some don't even count at all. Everywhere we see greed and bigotry being celebrated, and bullying and mockery masquerading as strength. We see science and expertise denigrated, while ignorance and dishonesty and cruelty and corruption are reaping untold rewards. Every single day we see that, and it's hard to hope in those moments. So it may be tempting to get discouraged, to give in to cynicism. It may be tempting for some to compromise with power and grab what you can, or even for good people to maybe just put your head down and wait for the storm to pass. But this man, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, inspires us to take a harder path. His voice calls on each of us to be heralds of change, to be messengers of hope, to step forward and say, send me. Wherever we have a chance to make an impact, whether it's in our school, or our workplaces, or our neighborhoods, or our cities. Not for fame, not for glory, or because success is guaranteed, but because it gives our life purpose. Because it aligns with what our faith tells us God demands. And because if we don't step up, no one else will. How fortunate we were that Jesse Jackson answered that call. What a great debt we owe to him. May God bless Reverend Jackson. May he rest in eternal peace. God bless you.
So guys, that is the former President Barack Obama and what he had to say on this event. So people were gathered, and I'm sure you have watched the video, have seen whatever was happening there. It was a celebration of a life, and Somehow amid his conversation, when he was giving his speech, his very, very powerful speech, he knew that the people of America are waiting to hear what he has to say about the situation of Americans and the things that are happening to America in the current days. Of course, you expect that he would have something to say, and to people's, surprise, he actually did, and he did it in the best way possible. Of course, he wasn't going to mention names and, point out the exact things that someone has done wrong, because, that wouldn't be so nice or kind. But you definitely know, if you're living in America, and doesn't matter if you're outside of America, you will um, definitely make up that he is talking about President Donald J. Trump. And this is because of the hard economic times that are in America right now. And I do recognize the fact that the hardship is not in America only, it is spread across the world. But America, is not known for that. America is known for far more important things than, people suffering and being unable to buy food. Yeah. Now that is what is making it a crisis, because we have, we can count the number of years we have had people of America complain about not being able to afford food or basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter. Now, President Obama might look as though he doesn't know these things are happening. Sometimes he doesn't talk because of the position that he occupies. He cannot be all over social media every other time talking about anything at all. So it is a rare occasion to see him speak and to have such an audience. So, and he's not even the kind to be online posting about everything. Recently, we saw President Trump do that, and he was actually talking about President Obama, sadly. And it was in the middle of the night. You wonder how presidential someone can be if you have the time and the nerve to be writing such stuff about someone else that was before you and occupying the same position. There's usually some common human decency that is required of you. It doesn't matter who you are, you have to respect others if you are to be respected as well. Now he wakes up in the middle of the night and decides to write a couple of posts. It wasn't one, not two. Writes a couple of posts about former President Obama, and that was quite irritating to most people. And on the morning of that day, people started talking about it, and their main concern was the fact that, why are you always bitter about this guy? He was here, he did his work, he did his best. He wasn't perfect, but he did his best. And people saw what he did. So why do you bother so much to, like he's living rent free in your head? Why? Because you have a lot of things to do, especially in the times that America is right now. People are going through the most, and the best thing a president should be doing is working out things to make sure that things become better, and not going to social media and making such posts. And that looks like your idol, like you have done everything right, and then now you have enough time to just be like a common person. So President Obama addressed that, and he was not mentioning names. That is the most important thing. But we all know who he was talking about, and he is just trying to establish the fact that America has changed great deal. America has gone like 5 steps below what he expected, and America has been destroyed. It's being destroyed every single day, and you can barely recognize that this is your country. The kind of things that if people are even discussing, the kind of life they are living, and everything is just going wrong. Like people are not even able to hope, and that is exactly what you said. You're unable to even hope. Yeah, hope is supposed to be the very, very basic thing that you can be able to do in any situation. But President Trump has made America so, you know, a living pain to people, because now people have gotten to a point where they can even not afford to hope, because you can hope sometimes when you have seen that yesterday was good and today has gone wrong, but since yesterday was okay, and then it means that tomorrow might be okay as well, or you have a chance at least of that happening. But for President Trump, he's made Americans feel as though there's no more hope left. Things just getting downhill every single day. Things are getting worse every single minute, and people are even scared. You are even trying to avoid the news, but you can also not afford to not watch it, because every other time, you have bad news today, you take a moment to absorb that, and then the next day there's bad news again and you have to take it in again, and the next day there's a different case, and people have gotten to a point where they're tired. Yeah, they're just unable to watch it anymore. You don't go to watching news with some positive vibes. You're going to watch the news, but you are expecting the worst, because that is what America has become. If you're not hearing about corruption, you're hearing about deaths. If you're not hearing about that, you're hearing about the harsh economic times that are coming up next, the prices of things that are going up, fuel prices are going up, like everything is just bad news to Americans right now. When you're talking about a situation where people can barely afford food, people can barely afford shelter, that's a crisis. That's really a crisis, because then that means that people have all reasons to be scared. They have all reasons to be worried, as that is not a good trend. And you have watched some of the videos where I found people talking about they have lost all hope in ever owning a home. That is not the kind of talk that you want the people that you are leading, to be having. People should look at you and see hope. They should look at you and know that you are working things together to make sure that they come together. But as for Trump, people are looking at him and thinking he is not considering them. He's not considerate in any sense. He doesn't care about the people. He is unwilling to listen, unwilling to learn. He's just fighting his own demons that he himself knows about. The interests of Americans are not at his heart. He cares only about himself, his businesses, his ways of making money, and his billionaires that are also making money. So the only people that are living comfortably in America at the moment are billionaires. And how many billionaires does America have? It's not the most percentage of people. Most people are actually average humans that, are just, yeah, they're just average in every sense. But then these are the same people that are just having it so rough, so tough, yeah. Nothing is working out for them. Everything that they try is just not going right. And the least you can expect is your president talking about it, addressing it, giving you hope, talking about he will sort it out, trying something, and things that make sense, and actually listening to the people. But he's not doing all that. He's in his own world. As we speak here, he actually, could be doing his own businesses out there that you're fully not aware, but you will know later, and it will make you very annoyed. So yeah, that is the situation. And President Obama, former President Obama, I keep forgetting. I'm fixated on that. So that is what he had to say, and I hope that you enjoyed watching him again, at least in a long, long time. And if you're joining us for the first time, if this is your first time on this channel, kindly consider subscribing to my channel and be part of this amazing family. Returning subscribers, thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I have seen you subscribe, I must mention. have seen you do a lot of subscriptions down there, and I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you guys. Thank you for growing the family. Sorry. And making sure that this kind of information gets to as many people as possible. And you're amazing. Yeah, I hope that you remember that every day. You're an amazing human being, each and every one of you. Guys, I'll see you on my next video. Bye for now.